The United States is the world's largest oil producer, but it still imports a lot of oil from other countries. Meanwhile, China is the world's biggest oil importer, and it doesn't produce enough oil to meet its own demand. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, in 2021, the United States produced 11.2 million barrels of oil per day, while China produced just 4.7 million barrels per day. In other words, the U.S. produces almost double the amount of oil that China does. So why doesn't China just drill for more oil at home? Well, there are many reasons why China is so dependent on foreign oil. But first, let's take a look at the numbers. Of course, this could change in the future as the United States continues to grow and develop. But for now, the United States is on track to remain the world's largest oil producer and consumer. That means that although China produced 4.7 million barrels of oil that year, it only needed to import 10 million barrels to meet its demand. Even though both countries produce a lot of oil, the U.S. produces and consumes more oil than China. This is why the U.S. is often called the world's largest oil producer, while China is called the world's largest oil importer. But wait a second. You might say, didn't you just say that the United States is the world's largest oil producer? Yes, I did. And I'm not contradicting myself here because the numbers don't lie. First, much of China's territory is mountainous, making it difficult to drill for oil. Second, China's population is so large that it consumes vast amounts of energy. And third, China's economy is growing rapidly, which also requires a lot of energy. All of these factors have contributed to China's heavy reliance on imported oil. This is why China is so interested in securing oil supplies from countries like Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. The United States does produce more oil than any other country in the world. But here's the important thing to remember. The United States also consumes a lot of oil. In fact, the United States is the world's largest oil consumer as well. In 2021, Americans consumed an average of 20.4 million barrels of oil per day. That means that even though the United States produced 11.2 million barrels of oil that year, it still had to import an additional 9.2 million barrels to meet demand. Meanwhile, China's oil consumption was 14.7 million barrels per day in 2021. Now back to the original question. Why doesn't China just drill for more oil at home? Well, there are a few reasons. On the other hand, the United States has a relatively small population and a developed economy, which means that it can produce enough oil to meet domestic demand without having to import large quantities from abroad. Facts like these are important because they show the real difference between the US and China. I hope this video was helpful. If you want to learn more about the US and China, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.